and welcome to the first episode of the Sable International Citizenship Podcast. My name's Tallulah, and I'm here with Mishal Patel, a British citizenship and immigration expert and director of our Immigration and Citizenship Division. British citizenship is a fascinating topic. There are all kinds of weird and wonderful routes, and we wanted to start this podcast to discuss some of them, as well as current news and events affecting UK citizenship. You can find it on YouTube or on our website, www.sableinternational.com, along with a full transcript and any relevant links. Today, Mishal is going to be talking about his own journey to British citizenship. Now, we're doing this virtually because I'm sitting in the South African office with our content team, and Mishal is in the UK. But maybe in a future episode, when travel restrictions are lifted and we're all vaccinated, we'll be in the same office. How's the weather today on the other side of the world?
Yeah, hi Tallulah, hi everyone. The weather it's been pretty nasty in the UK. It's been raining continuously for about 10 days, and as of yesterday, we've had clear skies and it's been sunshine. So as I'm looking out now, we're here in the 13th floor, and I'm looking out now, it's just pure sunshine. So I think it's a heat wave at the moment. So things are looking up. Thank you.
So basically it just rained for the bank holiday, and now that you're back at the office, it's going to be sunshine.
Yes, it will be Sod's Law, definitely. Yeah, back in the office, so the sun's like, I'm going to come out now and get you all jealous while you're stuck indoors. But yeah, shame.
Is it true what they say about how often it rains in the UK, or is it just an exaggeration?
I don't think it's an exaggeration. It's actually the case. It does rain like cats and dogs. For the past couple of weeks, it's rained so much in certain parts in the UK, which have seen a bit of sort of flash flooding and so on. So when it does rain, it does come in quite heavy. I mean, you see, with the UK, your main issue with this is that our whole system sort of revolves around good weather. And as a lot of British people will tell you, when the weather's good, we're all really happy. When the weather's miserable, London's very grey as it always seems to be. But yeah, hopefully next 10 days, sunshine.
So hopefully next weekend you can actually get out into the sun.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, yeah.
So you're an immigrant yourself, and now you help immigrants to move to the UK. But maybe you can tell us how you got your citizenship.
Oh. Sure, yeah, absolutely. I couldn't say it a better way. I feel like this firm is, most of our consultants are actually from various parts of the world themselves. And if I look at my team, I'm one of many migrants that works in that team. So it's really a firm that's, for migrants, run by migrants to a certain degree. And I think that gives us a real unique insight into not just the whole law and the casework behind it, but also how sensitive it is, how important it is, how crucial it is, how close to the heart it is that one's time in the UK is as smooth, and the process is as smooth, because it's such a massive part of one's life, especially a migrant that's come in, on a visa journey, perhaps. So I think for us, we do realize, and we do feel it in our DNA, that we actually know how people feel. And I think that gives us a real sort of winning point with our clients. But it all comes down to each individual story. And, my story is no different, somewhat maybe, from other people. And in short, I'm not from the UK. You can probably tell by my accent. It's very mixed. And I'm actually from Kenya. And for those who don't know, that's East Africa. So with Kenya, it used to be part of the UK, and then it gained independence on 12th of December, 63. So I was born there, my father was born there, and his parents, much like your East African Indian sort of generation, they came from what was then British India and settled in East Africa. And oddly enough, I actually, at the time of my birth in Kenya, I was actually born stateless, would you believe? So I actually had no nationality, Tallulah. I was actually not recognized as a Kenyan by Kenya, because they only gave Kenyan citizenship to people who were born to Kenyan citizens. My father was British when I was born. A much known word, unknown word really, he was a British overseas citizen. And my mom was, well, much to her surprise, she was also British, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So I was actually born stateless. I had a piece of A4 size document that had my picture on it, and it said I was stateless, and I used that to travel. It was a travel document of a type, really. And that's why I can relate to these things, because I actually had no nationality.
Yeah, you
But
know that
forward,
feeling of like not belonging anywhere, not having a place that you have the document to say this is my home.
Correct. Exactly that. And it still happens to this very day. You have children who are still born stateless who find themselves stateless as adults as well. And that's one of the reasons why I got into this type of work, is because, what this firm was able to do for me, I want to emulate that for others. And that's our ethos behind me and my team here at Sable. But so the journey really started at that point where I was stateless, and eventually, fast forward a few years, ended up getting Kenyan citizenship by registration, and I became a Kenyan. But what actually ended up is, in my teenage years, unfortunately, we faced a sort of family tragedy when my dad actually passed away, and my mom was really faced with the opportunity at that stage to either try her hand at raising us in Kenya, because I have a smaller sister, or try her hand at coming to the UK where she had some family. Now, she chose the latter, which is a more difficult approach, but it seems to have worked out clearly. But my mom was born in Yemen, at modern day Yemen. At that point, she was born in a small town called Eden, and it was on the coast of what is now Yemen, and itself it was a British colony. And she never looked into it herself. She never wanted to get a British passport. And now faced with raising two kids in Kenya, she had to face up to that possibility of having to move to the UK for a better life, much like everybody else in the world right now. In certain countries, want to move to the UK for a better future for their children. So she went on that path, and she got in touch with a local lawyer in Kenya who actually put her in touch with Mr. Philip Gamble. And now, for those of us, for those of us on this podcast or listening to this who don't know Mr. Philip Gamble, he is the founder of what was Philip Gamble and Company, then merged into Sable International, and that's how we are to this very moment. But Philip Gamble is the world leading authority in terms of British nationality law, and my mentor really. But he managed to book my mom an appointment. She traveled to the UK by herself, left us back with family friends in Kenya after what had happened. And she ended up booking an appointment to see him in his Croydon branch. Obviously, this lady's never traveled on public transport in the UK, let alone traveled. She ended up coming to the meeting about half an hour late, in tears. So Philip still remembers this to this very day. And my mom's name is Dina, and she Philip said to her, "Well, don't worry, let's have a look at your paperwork." And my mom takes out this birth certificate, and it looks like a British birth certificate. And he goes, "Wow, where is this from?" She said, "Oh no, that's my birth certificate." And he then finds out she's born in what was a British colony, modern day Yemen, and he did a bit of searching and all that in the meeting, and he turns around to my mom and says, "Tina, you're British." She goes, "Are you having a laugh? Is this a scam or something?" And he actually found a route for my mom to become what we call a British Overseas Citizen. So someone who is British but connected to a previous UK colony rather than the UK. It's a simple way of putting it. In the modern day, you can get British overseas passports. They look like British passports, but they're not British citizens. So they ended up working together, and my mom had to stay back, and we were separated for quite a while, but she ended up getting her British nationality sorted, getting a British overseas passport, changing that to full British citizenship, and then sponsoring me and my sister to move into the UK. So that's how I first learned about Philip Gamble and Sable International to some degree, as a 16-year-old, would you believe, in
Amazing.
Kenya.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
you've
it is
actually
pretty.
used the services yourself. And
Correct.
how rare are those routes, those strange colonial routes like
Yeah.
yours?
So not as rare as most people think, actually, Talua, because you see, what it is if you think about it in a historical context, the UK did conquer around half the world. And when it did this, it made all those people born there on those territories British.
Mm.
So that's everyone born in Canada, everyone born in Australia, everyone born in Kenya, modern day Malawi, modern day Zambia, Zimbabwe, South Africa. All those people were British subjects at some point in their life, or their ancestors were. Now, what ended up happening here is, as the British Empire was shrunk down to some degree, and all these countries started wanting independence and being granted independence, the whole ideology behind it was, if you're going to give you independence, we're going to strip you away from your British nationality.
Mm.
However, there's always a however. And the however comes in the point that some classes of people in those territories were not caught in by that general rule. So they didn't lose their British nationality. Such a class of people is someone like my dad, who is actually a migrant to the Kenya colony. Although he was born there, his parents weren't born there. So you see, when that country became independent, i.e. Kenya, it didn't want to issue my dad Kenyan citizenship because he's not really from there.
Mm.
And like that was the same situation with most other, African countries, which were previous British territories, or the Bahamas, for example, or the West Indies. And hence, you get a new class of British citizens, which are left over from the colonial days. And the UK are recognizing them through the efforts that we do as a firm. And also, just because it's the right thing, because they had to have a right. So I would say, as a firm, we see one every week nowadays.
Wow.
We see one person with a claim to British Overseas Citizenship or British Protected Person, which is slightly different, same thing, every week, more or less.
Wow.
So yeah, they're not as rare.
So getting back to your story, how did you go from being a client to working for Philip Gamble?
Yeah, so we came into the UK, and obviously at that point I'd not met Philip in person. My mom had, obviously. And again, fast forward a few years when I did high school, and I went into a university course to study a law degree. My mom said, "Oh, Mishal, you are so kind of wayward during some holidays. You're doing so many different things, but not really doing anything that's substantial to what you want to do as a career. Why don't you go and intern at a solicitorship or someone like that?" And I did. So I went and interned at a solicitorship in the UK. I did that for a few weeks, and then the chap was said to my mom, "Okay, well, he's done here." So I went back home, and I still had about 2 months left. And this is when I was about, I think, 19 years old. Yeah, 19 years old, I would believe, or 21 of them. And my mom said, "Okay, no, I know someone else. Let me call Philip Gamble. And let me ask him whether he's got any vacancies, and he can, you can go and do a little bit of work for him for the remainder of that summer while you wait for uni to open up again." And so she did. And I then was asked to come for an interview at the offices in Croydon with Philip Gamble. And I remember having the same problem as my mom. I ended up being half an hour late. So I see Philip Gamble, obviously, and now I'm quite nervous because I'm late. And the first thing he says to me is, "It must run in the family," or is this just an East African thing?
So he remembered your mom and he
I was
remembered
like,
that
"Yep."
meeting.
I couldn't believe it. It was the very same room my mom sat a few years back.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then we had a quick chat, and he said, "Yep, why don't you start off next week?" I said, "Great." So I came back in next week, sort of a week later, and he said, "Well, we've got a basement full of old files. Your job is to destaple them, and I want you to scan them. So I go down the basement, and I kid you not, there were thousands of these files in boxes that have been stored there.
Your
So that was
pre-digital digitization. You were basically digitizing all of the previous case files.
Correct. And that's how I started off at the firm. I started doing all admin work, including that type of work. But what I quickly learned, and having looked at my own family file as well, which was still there, right,
Wow.
from 2005, I quickly learned how important it is and how much of a difference it can make to a family where they have this option. Because if it wasn't for him and my mom interacting, I wouldn't be where I am, and I wouldn't have these opportunities. So it's so crucial to get the right advice at the right time for any family that are looking at moving into the UK, because you really just don't know until you had a proper look, especially where you've got UK-born ancestors. Or ancestors connected to UK territories like I have. But yeah, I said to Philip, I said, this is what I want to do. This is my life's calling. I know it. And he just laughed. He's like, are you sure? There's not many young people who want to read 200-year-old legal texts. I said, no, for me, it's my history. It's who I am. It's in my DNA. And I really want to help people in the same vein as you help my family. So I started coming there every summer, and I started really hassling him to learn everything off him and sponge off him as much as I could. And before you know it, he then trained me to be a caseworker, went on to become a manager, and then recently become a director about a year and a half back, and just helped thousands of families throughout the process. And that's what keeps me going, really.
So what is your absolute favorite part of your job?
Wow, I think it's hard to say. I like so much of it. I like the training aspect, but I think the most absolute favorite part of my job has to be giving hope when the client has been told there is no hope, honestly, because I think that's what it was for my family. Either it was the UK or we just had no hope, really. And I think, in all seriousness, I know, not I think, I know that if that would be my most favorite part, and it has happened once or twice in my last 12 years with this firm. I just celebrated my 12-year anniversary with the firm, and when I think back, I can remember 2-3 really key cases, key moments where I said to myself, wow, this is worth doing. And it's not even about the money. It's about that client and changing their life. And it is about changing someone's life. And I think with this knowledge and what we have, the expertise we have at Sable Immigration and Nationality, we are able to do that. We are able to take on where people have been told, no, what are you on about? It's not possible. So I think my most favorite part is proving people wrong and really getting results for that one client that's in quite a desperate, tight position.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time. I think this has been a really great first episode. And yeah, we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. We're going to be talking about the EU settlement scheme, frequently asked questions, the things that you might not know. I think it will be interesting to listen to, even for people who aren't from the EU, just to have a better understanding of the process. So yeah, we'll see you then.
Yeah, thanks guys for tuning in.
Thanks for listening. Bye.